Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. Today we're doing something a little bit different in that I don't really have a recipe for what I'm cooking today, or I guess I kind of do. What we did was a couple of days ago I posted a poll over on the YouTube channel and took some votes on what you guys wanted me to cook based on what's in my refrigerator. So we took some polls on pretty much everything that was in my refrigerator, and now we took that poll and then I picked the top 5 things, and I'm about to assemble a recipe based on those things. So some of it will kind of make sense because a lot of the things that I cook fall under the same kind of general cuisine. So a lot of the things that are in my refrigerator will kind of make sense. So things like garlic and ginger and green onions, stuff like that. But a lot of the things that are in my refrigerator do not belong in a wok fry. So we're going to try and figure out how to make some of those things work. So I took a little bit of liberties on how we're going to assemble this today because some of it I couldn't quite make out. But I honestly think I have a relatively coherent recipe ready to go here. So I think it's actually going to be mostly pretty good. Some of it, maybe. We'll see. But if you have any questions for me, feel free and drop your questions in the chat. I don't know everything about wok cooking, but I know lots of stuff. Definitely don't know everything about what I'm about to cook, but we're going to take a shot at it. Travis, oh yeah, you love this. Yeah, hopefully if it goes well, I guess even if it doesn't go well, I'll probably keep doing it every Thursday. So, I think it's a fun idea and just a cool way of like integrating new recipe ideas because I've been trying to figure out new ways of cooking new stuff. If you are wondering, so if you're over on Reddit, I have to switch to this poll because it doesn't fit in the screen. If you're wondering though, what I did is I took this poll and kind of took a look at what everything people wanted me to cook, and I took a poll of everything that I've got in my refrigerator, and we kind of assembled what those ingredients are gonna be. As far as I can tell, I think the things that we're going to be using today are russet potatoes, ramen, pineapple. What are the other things? Russet potatoes, pineapple, kimchi. Oh, ramen. Oh, and cheese. So we're going to be using cheese. So if you're wondering, the potatoes and the cheese, those don't belong in any wok fry. I don't think I've ever seen a wok fry that uses cheese. Well, I guess I've seen one wok fry that uses cheese, but that's not what we're going to be doing today. The reason that is the case is because super often most like Chinese cuisine is dairy free because Chinese people don't really eat dairy. The one exception that I can think of is that occasionally you will see cheese in a lot of like Korean foods. Not occasionally, actually, pretty often you see it in Korean food because that I believe is actually an American adaptation of Korean food. So super often in Korean food you see the use of mozzarella cheese, which totally just comes from just like the Americanization of Korean street food, and it's all over all Korean street food. So we're going to be kind of taking a page out of that book and then sort of using the potatoes in a context that is actually, I think, is relatively traditional actually. So what we're going to be doing today, so I've got some russet potatoes that I usually cook for breakfast. I usually use them for hash browns and stuff. But I had them on my pantry, and you guys voted for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some Korean, a banchan dish, which if you've ever had Korean food, before you get your food, there's like usually like 6 or 7 small plate appetizers that come before it. That's pretty common in most like Korean barbecue food. One of those banchans is called something bokum, and I'm blanking on the name now. But essentially what it is a glazed potato dish. So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow the glaze from another recipe that I did, which was a gochujang glazed fried chicken. So I'm going to take the glaze from that gochujang glazed fried chicken, and then I'm going to glaze it in. I'm going to glaze those potatoes in instead. So it's basically going to be essentially like a General Tso's chicken or a honey sesame chicken, but with potatoes. And I think it's going to work. We'll see. Yeah. Yeah. Hermina, how's it going? Yeah. Sarah, yeah, the greater the risk, the sweeter the reward. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'll be honest. I was really hoping that you guys would pick the ramen. So when I put the ramen in there, I was pretty excited about the idea of messing around with a fried rice that incorporates ramen. And I was really hoping that people wouldn't pick the cheese. because I don't know that that's gonna work. But I actually think that the fried rice that we're gonna do today, or I guess the ramen fried rice that we're gonna do today, definitely would work without that cheese, and then the cheese is gonna be maybe not. So essentially for it, in addition to the potato dish that we're going to do, the other half of the dish that I'm going to do is essentially a fried rice, or it's a combination of two fried rice recipes that I've done already. One of which is a Hawaiian fried rice, which is essentially fried rice with pineapple. And then one of which is a kimchi fried rice. So we're going to do a combination of those two things. But then what we're going to do is we're going to fold in some ramen and cheese into it, which is not something that I have ever done in my life. I don't. But as far as I can tell, I looked it up and I found two pretty promising recipes that came up on Serious Eats that seem like it should work. Conceptually, it all should work. So as far as like how I see it going in my head, I think it should work. So we'll see. Yeah. Yeah. So it should be fun. We'll find out. Yeah. RKK6, yeah, how's it going? How is everyone today? Feel comfortable. What kind of knife do I have? Oh yeah, lots of people ask about this knife. Oh, you want to get some nice knives and you don't know where to start. Oh, cool. So lots of people ask about this knife. It's a French chef's knife. It's a vintage French chef's knife, so you probably won't be able to find this particular knife. Because I found it at an estate sale, and I know for certain that it's no longer in production. It's made by a company called Pernois Nogent. Which was making like close copies of a more famous and definitely still in production chef's knife called the Sabatier. The Sabatier is for sure still in production. You can get those at like Macy's and stuff. But they're you probably won't find it like this. I think that the production version of the Sabatier is made out of stainless steel, so you won't see it made like this. This is made out of carbon steel. That's why it's kind of gray like that. It has like a patina. But generally when folks ask about this knife, I recommend, you probably won't find this knife, but you can definitely find the Sabatier, which is for sure still in production. But also like when people tell me about like, if you're like on the hunt for like a good set of knives, my personal opinion is that if you're looking to invest some money, I would say invest in a good set of things to sharpen your knives, because that's going to be a lot more useful than a good set of knives. So before you invest in a good set of knives, invest in a good set of good whetstone, and that whetstone is going to do a lot more work for you than any knife. So I used a cheap like Komachi knife, the kind that you get from Costco for like I think like 10-15 years before I bought these knives. And they served me for a really long time, and that's just because I had a good whetstone that I was using to keep them really, really sharp. So it's a whole lot more useful to make sure that your knives are sharp rather than having expensive knives. So even when, like, if you do have an expensive knife, if it's not sharp, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to be very useful to you, and you're probably better off with a sharp, cheap knife. I see Wally. Yeah, you are absolutely allowed to ask questions. Ask away. Yeah. An old Sabatier. Yeah, I actually have an old Sabatier too. So I found these all three of these knives at an estate sale. I think I got all three of them for like $30, which is crazy because like the Sabatier alone was worth like $250 or so, something like that. So I got this one. And a second knife that's identical. I think whoever was using one for veggies and one for meat. And then the third one, this larger one, this is actually a Sabatier. So you could tell they actually look almost identical. The main difference is this bevel right here is a little bit different. But otherwise, they're pretty close. So this would be like an actual Sabatier. This is a vintage Sabatier. All three are made out of carbon steel. That's why they're like gray like this. And the Sabatier, you can see actually it has some rust damage. I found it like this. So that's like, you can see a lot closer. On the Sabatier, there's a lot more rust damage on the Sabatier. So whoever was using this didn't take super great care of it. But the Sabatier, you'll notice that the Sabatier that I own is 16 inches long, which is like not really a lot of use for a 16-inch chef's knife. Mostly what it's meant for is like butcher stuff. So like chopping up like an entire rack of pig or something. So I don't really have a lot of use for that knife, but it's cool though. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, but otherwise though, if you're not hooked on finding a vintage knife, you can find the Sabatier in production. You can like look them up on Macy's, and they're still in production. But I'm pretty sure their production versions it'll be made out of stainless steel. I don't think I ever see carbon steel knives anymore. Let's be honest. Cool. Oh, what's the difference between a garbanzo bean and a chickpea? I have no idea. I'm pretty sure that they're the same thing. If there's someone on here that can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that they're the same thing, a garbanzo bean and a chickpea. Definitely when I use them interchangeably. So I don't know if you're supposed to do that, but as far as I know, I always just assumed that they were the same thing. All right. So what I just finished doing, you'll notice that I just doubled the amount of ginger. Actually, let me see. I just doubled the amount of ginger and garlic that we just did. So this is my ginger and garlic on one side, and my ginger and garlic on my other side. So for this side, one of these are going to go in for our potatoes, and one of these is going to go into the wok fry for our fried rice. So we're separating these by two. The one for the fried rice is also going to have some green onions. So I'm doing the prep work for both of my side dishes right now, so that we don't have to worry about it once we start cooking. You'll notice though, I do this super often, but when I chop green onions super often, I will separate the greens because the greens are a lot more tender, so they kind of bend and give a little bit more. I like doing that because they're a little bit more delicate, so if you were to throw this straight into the wok fry like what we're going to do with the whites, they tend to just sort of like fall apart and disappear. So I like saving them and leaving them raw and then using them as a garnish, so they're the very last thing that we throw on. You can also, sometimes I even do this, you can also do it with the whites. But the whites are a little bit more pungent, so they kind of like cut through a little bit more. Whenever I use the whites of my green onions for garnish, it kind of like reminds me of the flavor of like it's just a straight up raw onion, which is a little bit aggressive. So those are our aromatics. As far as, for folks who have watched this series before, as far as we're going, those are probably three things that you have seen me cut up in pretty much every stream. Maybe not the green onions, but pretty much every dish that I do, you will see these two, garlic and ginger. And very often I'll be doing those green onions too. Yeah. What's the difference between honing and sharpening a knife? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know everything about knife sharpening, but I could definitely answer that for you. I'm not an expert at knife sharpening, but the main difference, so what we use for honing a knife is the steel. So you will usually see me doing this at the start of every stream. And honing a knife is not actually sharpening the blade. What it's actually doing is straightening the blade. So every time that you chop something, there's a micro dent that happens in the blade. And it feels like it's going dull, but it's not actually going dull. It's just denting in a certain way every time that you chop. So when you hone the knife, that's why you have to do it every time you use the knife. You want to straighten out all of those little micro dents to make sure that it will still cut straight. Whereas sharpening a knife is the result of the blade, the actual sharp end of the blade going dull. So that's pretty much the fullest extent of what I know about knife sharpening. I'm definitely not a knife sharpening expert. But as far as I understand it, I think pretty sure that's the difference. And I hone my knife literally every time that I use my knife. You will see me honing it before I use it, just to get those little dents out. And it feels in terms of like how it feels when you chop, it feels very similar. It feels like the knife is going dull. Okay. So onto our weird ingredients. This is one of the ones that you guys voted for. So this is my frozen pineapple. There's not a lot of it left. Secretly, the reason that I was hoping that you picked this one is because this is actually an ingredient that I use in many fried rices, or at least one very particular fried rice that I do all the time, which is a Hawaiian fried rice. And the combination of sweet and savory works really well. It seems a little bit weird, but it works super well. So what we're going to do is we're going to dice these up. It has to be frozen. Whenever you use fruit like this, it has to be frozen before you put it into the fried rice. These pineapples, when I bought them, were fresh. And then I went out of my way to freeze them because what's going to happen is they're going to defrost in the fry. So if they don't have the time, the opportunity to defrost, so if we were using fresh pineapple, they would just go from fresh to mushy in the fry. Whereas if they're frozen, we're going to throw them in at the very, very end, and they're just going to go from frozen to nice and crisp. So for these pineapples, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set them aside, and I'm actually going to throw them back in my freezer to make sure that they stay frozen. Cool, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that I was at least a little bit helpful. I know I have for sure seen other chefs on these streams that like know a lot more about knife sharpening than I do. And people ask me all the time if I'll ever do like a knife sharpening tutorial. I'm not an expert on knife sharpening. I don't know very much about knife sharpening, but I do know what it feels like to use a dull knife, and it's the worst. So. All right, next up, we're going to use some bacon here. Pretty much every fried rice that I'll do, I think, involves some kind of bacon. I just think that it works really, really well. But the main reason, actually, that we need to use it today is because what I'm going to do, since we're involving cheese, and this is not a hypothesis that I have tested yet, but my theory is, based on the research that I've done through a number of Serious Eats recipes, is we're going to treat this like a crispy fried rice. So similar to, I'm thinking of two different recipes that I've done before. So a crispy kimchi fried rice and a crispy bacon fried rice. And essentially what we're going to do is render out all of the fat content of our bacon here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that fat, put it in a cast iron pan, and then we're going to sear the bottom. So usually in those two fried rices that I mentioned, that's the fullest extent of the sear. So in this case, what my plan is today is we're going to render this fat, and then instead of searing it on the stovetop, I'm going to put it in the broiler because we're also going to add cheese on top of it. And my theory is, and this is the same way that you get the like crispy tops to a lot of like baked mac and cheese, is you put it under the broiler and it's going to crisp up that cheese really nicely. So I think it will work. It makes sense to me in theory because that's how mac and cheese works. I've never done it before though, so we'll see. So that's our bacon. All right. Yeah. Cool. All right, so bacon up next. What we're gonna do, what was I gonna do next? Oh yeah, our potatoes. All right, so next up are some russet potatoes. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna make a Korean glazed like fried potato. And this is actually, so if you've ever eaten, I mentioned this earlier, but if you've ever eaten Korean barbecue, super often, one of the appetizers that come before it, they're called banchan, will be a potato. So I've always wondered about those potatoes because they often, as far as I understood it, they don't really seem like they come out of Korean food. It always just seemed like it came out of American food. But after doing some research, and I actually looked it up on a number of recipes, this is definitely a traditional Korean dish, and I'm blanking on the name now. Bokum something, I forget I'm blanking on the name now. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to glaze this in a gochujang glaze that I'm basically borrowing from another fried chicken recipe that I did. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by making home fries, so the same way that you would do any kind of like skillet home fry for breakfast. We're going to throw these into a skillet and then sear them on all sides until they're like super browned and crispy. And then at that point, you could basically pull them out and eat them with some ketchup, and it's throw on some scrambled eggs, and that's basically what you eat for breakfast. But instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to pull them out, toss them in a little bit of salt, and then throw it back into our wok fry, and then get a really, really nice glaze going. So pretty similar to how we would do like a tempura fried chicken or a General Tso's chicken, or like a Beijing beef, any kind of like fried chicken, glazed fried chicken that comes from like Chinese wok frying. So, once again, I'm combining a whole bunch of recipes to sort of make this work, but I think it'll work. Yeah. Oh, delicious. Have I ever made Thai pineapple fried rice? I have not. I've made a number of pineapple fried rices, but I have not messed around with a Thai fried rice. I'll have to try that, though. I'll add that to my list. It's a good one. So for potatoes, I mentioned this on the last stream that we did for curry too, but you will notice that what I'm doing is I'm chopping off the edge of one of each end of my potato. So what we're doing is, so you'll notice that when you pick potatoes out, the edges of the potato right around here and right around here, they're going to come out a little bit uneven, and that's just because of the nature of how the potatoes are shaped. So you can leave it on if you want, especially if you don't want to be wasteful. But what I like to do is remove that little edge, and that helps us get like a nice even sear, especially if you're going to be searing the potatoes. That helps them cook evenly. If you leave that on, what's going to happen is where it tapers, that's going to start burning. So if you don't mind it burning, you can also just totally leave it on and reduce food waste. But I like to remove them. Yeah. Okay, Nefariousness, yeah, thanks for joining. Today what we're doing is, so if you're just tuning in, hello if you're just tuning in, my name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. What I did was a couple of days ago, I did a poll over on the YouTube channel and posted everything that was in my refrigerator. Just no bars held, just literally everything that's in my refrigerator. Well, like the top 20 things that I could see, because there was a cap on the YouTube poll of 20 things. So I posted the top 20 things that were in my refrigerator, and then we took some votes, and you guys picked what you wanted to see me put into a fried rice. So I picked the top 5 things, and we're throwing all of that into a fried rice today, which is why you'll notice some of the stuff that I'm chopping up, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you put potatoes in a fried rice? You wouldn't. It doesn't make any sense. So what we're gonna be cooking today is some Korean glazed potatoes, which come from Korean panchan. So what we're going to do is gochujang glaze on these potatoes, and that's going to be our side dish. And then for our fried rice, we're going to do a cheesy kimchi pineapple fried rice. So we're going to be combining a few different recipes that I've written, one of which is a Hawaiian fried rice that uses pineapple. That's actually why I have the pineapple, is to make those pineapple fried rices. And one of which is a Korean kimchi fried rice, which uses a nice sear, uses bacon fat to get a nice sear. And then what we're going to do is we're going to involve a little bit of cheese, and essentially instead of doing that sear in the bacon fat, we're going to throw it in the broiler, and we're going to get a nice crispy top to it too. So, and hopefully that will give us a nice crispy cheesy fried rice if we do it correctly. But again, all of this is in theory. I have never cooked any of these things before. All of these are recipes that I just threw together based off of what people were voting for. So. All right, so for our russets, super important fundamentals about russets. They oxidize really, really quickly. So if you've ever left russets sitting out on the countertop, they will oxidize within like 5 minutes or so. So before they oxidize, anytime that you finish cutting your russets, you want to hold those or keep them stored in some water. So what I'm doing here is I have them in a strainer, and then underneath my strainer is a bowl filled with water. And that's just going to prevent them from oxidizing. If you don't do that, then they're going to turn pink. And then you'll have pink potatoes, which is not going to be terrible. It will still be tasty, but you generally don't want to eat pink potatoes. So. Yeah, we're not here for things that make sense. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, when did I put the poll up? Good question. I think the poll went up on either Monday or Tuesday, but it's always over on the community tab. That's where all of the polls live. So if you're on the YouTube channel, it's over on the community tab of the YouTube channel. I like using that poll tab. What I use that poll tab for is taking requests for like things that people want me to do recipes for. But I've started using it for these polls. So yeah, cool. All right, last thing that I'm gonna throw into my fried rice today is a little bit off book, but I'm throwing in, this is a single Chinese sausage, or a lapchang. These are really, really common in most like fried rices, I think at least. At least when I was growing up, these are like the main thing that I always associated with fried rice was lapchang. Generally my favorite part about a lapchang though is that it has a whole lot of Chinese spices in it. So to me, the predominant flavor that I get out of a lapchang is Chinese 5-spice, which has a couple of different things, but the ones that stand out to me are a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of cumin. So I love using them in a fried rice because it's kind of just like a cheat code into like getting things to taste like a little bit more like authentically Asian. But just generally, if you throw them into a fried rice, it's going to be really great. Kind of like using a sausage in a pasta as a little bit of a cheat. So I'm just slicing these up into relatively small coins. Yeah. Yeah, you'll have to look for it. Yeah, hopefully I'm going to try and do this most Thursdays. So if it goes well, hopefully I'm going to try and do it at most Thursdays. So generally like Monday or Tuesday, I'll probably throw that up on the community tab. All right, so that's our lapchang. Cool. What else? Let's get our sauce together. Yeah. Ooh, did I make it with Will Tennyson? I don't think so. I'm not sure who that is. Cool, yeah. Yeah, cool. Let's do it. All right, so last up, I'm going to assemble both the glazes, one of which is going to be for my glazed potatoes, and one of which is going to be the sauce for my fried rice. So first up is the sauce for our fried rice. And if you are keeping track, or if you're familiar with the Wu Can Cook recipes, this sauce comes straight out of the Hawaiian fried rice sauce. So this is literally the sauce from that recipe, which is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, then 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, then 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. If you've never used oyster sauce, it comes from the fermentation of oyster, as the name implies, which means that it gives us a lot of fishy umami. Lots of people ask if you can substitute it with hoisin sauce, because it looks like hoisin sauce, but it's not very similar at all. I always recommend, if you can't find oyster sauce, fish sauce is probably the next best thing. And then next up is a single tablespoon of rice vinegar, followed by 2 tablespoons. Is not enough gochujang. We're actually running out of gochujang. What I wanted to use is 2 tablespoons of gochujang. We're running low on gochujang, so I'm going to substitute it with some doubanjiang instead, which is the same thing but comes from Korean or Chinese food. The main difference between gochujang and doubanjiang, you will often see me using those 2 things interchangeably when I run out of one or both of them. But the main difference is that gochujang has a little bit more sweetness to it, so I might add a pinch of sugar to replace some of that sweetness. Both of which, though, come from the fermentation of chili. So they kind of like amp up the spiciness of a lot of dishes. So I'm going to add that was a pinch of salt, and then the last thing that I'm going to go off book a little bit and add It's a little bit, maybe a single teaspoon of brown sugar. And that's going to more or less make up for the fact that we're losing a lot of sugar from not using gochujang today. Yeah, that'll do it. And that's going to be the sauce for our fried rice. Then next up, the last thing that I'm going to assemble here is the glaze for our potatoes. So once again, if you are following along, the glaze that I'm using today is literally the glaze from another recipe that I did for fried chicken a couple months ago. It was for a Korean gochujang glazed fried chicken that we were hacking the gochujang glazed fried chicken from Shake Shack. I've also cooked it on stream quite a few times. So I'm borrowing that glaze today is what we're using. The main or like outstanding qualities that I identify about this glaze is that it has very little liquid in it. And that's to make sure that it has a nice cohesive property to it so that it sticks to the things that we're glazing. If it has too much liquid, when you try and glaze something in a wok fry, it will just turn soggy. So that's my favorite part about this glaze, is that it does not have a lot of liquid in it. So that was 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar. And that is it for the liquid ingredients. Next up are 3 things that are going to make it a glaze, which is 2 tablespoons of sweet chili sauce. I often associate this with the sauce that you eat egg rolls with, like sweet and sour sauce. And then next up is 2 tablespoons of honey. And then lastly, we're going to use up the last of our gochujang. That's the reason why I wasn't using it. This is going to be 1 tablespoon of gochujang. Yeah. So I'm mixing this up. A whole bunch of the things that I just put into here are very, very thick and definitely have a quality about it that will cause it to clump up. That includes the honey, also the chili sauce, but definitely that gochujang. All 3 of those things are going to clump up if you don't treat them carefully. So what we're looking for here is we're just trying to make sure that we have a loose sauce base here so that we don't have any like large clumps of gochujang. Make it really spicy. Yeah, so that if you're noticing, I only used a single tablespoon of gochujang for a glaze that is called a gochujang glaze. That's because gochujang is very, very concentrated. So you will rarely see me using more than a tablespoon or maybe 2 tablespoons of gochujang in a single recipe. It's because a little bit goes a long way with that stuff. But yeah, if you want to make it super spicy, you could use a whole bunch. Yeah. So that's our potato glaze. Lots of questions. Cool. Oh, am I a professional chef? I am not a professional chef. Well, I guess I'm kind of a professional chef. Lately, I've been doing a lot of like prep cooking, so I guess that makes me a professional chef. I don't have professional chef training, though. I guess lots of chefs don't, though. I don't have any professional chef training. I didn't go to school for culinary anything. I went to music school, and then I started this blog during COVID because I used to play music for a living and like bars and stuff. But when COVID happened, all of that kind of just stopped. So I started this blog, or this is not a blog anymore. It's just like a channel. I guess it's a channel for a lot of recipes. So most of the things that we cook on the channel, though, are things that come from like generally my childhood. Cool. Yeah, most of the things that we cook on the channel are things that just like come out of like recipes from my childhood, which is why a lot of them tend to be like Chinese or like based on Chinese cooking. Most of the time they're things that happen in a wok, so we're going to be using both a wok and a cast iron skillet right now. But yeah, most of the time those are the things that we're cooking. I forgot. While I talk, I'm going to start rendering the fat out of our bacon here. So my cast iron pan is ice cold. There was a reason why I didn't preheat it. I actually forgot until just now. My cast iron pan is not preheated at all. I just put the bacon into a very, very cold pan. What we're trying to do right now is render out all of the fat, so all of the white parts of that bacon we're trying to render out. Actually, yeah, let's do that. I'm going to render out all of that bacon fat, and that's going to give us a nice liquid bacon content. And that's what we're going to use to sear our fried rice today. Do I want to do that though? Actually, let's do our... I just changed my mind. Let's do our potatoes first. I changed my mind. I'm going to do the potatoes first. Sorry, guys. I think those are going to take less time, though. So, in that case, while I steer in a different direction, I'm going to start preheating my cast iron pan. And at this point, if you're familiar with any kind of making potatoes for breakfast, this is going to start looking pretty familiar. What we're essentially going to do is we're going to heat up our cast iron pan really, really hot, and then we're going to sear the russet potatoes on as many sides as we can until we get a nice, really, really browned and crispy home fried potato. That's essentially what we're doing. It's like a diner potato. It needs to be extremely crispy because we're going to be glazing it too. So if it's not crispy enough, it will go from like relatively crispy into like a soggy potato, which is like probably still going to be really good because it's going to be a potato covered in honey, but not quite what we're looking for. So we need that cast iron pan to be extremely hot before we start searing it. Otherwise, we're not going to get a crispy potato. Yeah, is it a cast iron pan? Yeah, so I will often say there are only really 2 pans in my entire kitchen that I ever use. Maybe 3 now, but one of which is that cast iron pan and the other one is this wok. But those are generally the only the 2 main pans that I ever use. So super, super often, probably like 90% of every stream, you will notice that the pan that I'm using is probably the wok. It's probably the one that I use the most. And if I'm not using the wok, I'll generally probably be cooking in that cast iron pan. I also have one other copper bottom stainless steel skillet that I use sometimes for soft scrambled eggs and stuff. But generally if I'm cooking anything like Asian themed, probably either the cast iron or the wok or both. Moderate Carb Maven, how's it going? Yeah, hello. Oh, you're new. Welcome to the channel. Yeah, welcome to the YouTube channel. Ooh, yeah, how do I clean the cast iron? Good question. I clean the cast iron the same way that I clean the wok, which is essentially, so we generally, I've seen differing opinions, so I'm subscribed to the subreddit r cast iron, and I've seen a bunch of different opinions on how to season or clean a cast iron. I definitely see Kenji Lopez mention that you can absolutely use soap and water on a cast iron pan. I don't know if I prescribe to that. That seems a little bit counterintuitive, mainly because we don't want to use soap and water in a cast iron because the cast iron, the seasoning of the cast iron is going to start absorbing the flavors of that soap. So you generally don't want to use soap. That's, as far as I knew, the reason why you don't use soap on cast iron is because it's going to start absorbing the flavor of what you clean it in. So you don't want to use things like Barkeeper's Friend or like dish soap, stuff like that. You don't want to be using that. So usually what I'll do is when I finish using my cast iron pan, while it's hot, it has to be hot still. When the cast iron pan is hot, it has a non-stick surface, so we rinse it off, and that will generally get like 90% of everything off of the pan because it's still very, very non-stick. And then what I'll do is I'll reheat it again, and pretty much the rest of it will either burn off or you can pretty much just wipe it off. Sometimes I'll rinse it twice, and that's basically all you really need to do to clean a cast iron pan. But most importantly, the last thing that you'll do is coat it in a little bit of oil. So I'll add a little bit of vegetable oil and give it a nice coat, and that prevents it from rusting. We're going to be doing that at the very, very end when I finish cooking. So if you're still here by the time I finish, we'll walk through it. I'm also going to do the exact same thing for my wok too. Yeah. Have you ever cooked an egg on hot cement? I have not tried. I thought about it. But it would have to be really, really hot. I've thought about this a lot, actually. But in order to cook fry an egg on cement, the cement pavement would have to be extremely hot, like hotter than, like if it was hot enough to actually fry an egg, you'd probably be burning through your shoe. So it's like, the more that I think about it, I don't know if that's actually possible. Maybe you can. I don't know. I've never tried. Yeah, thanks for asking. Good question. Yeah. Cool. Hello to everyone just tuning in before I start doing these potatoes. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. Welcome to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. Welcome to the Reddit channel if you're watching on Reddit. We're here streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, it's going to look a little bit different from most of the streams, so definitely go through the YouTube channel and check out some of the other streams if this is the first one that you've caught. Because generally when I'm cooking on stream, I'll probably be cooking through something that I've written a recipe for. Those all come out every Friday over on the YouTube channel. So every Friday there's a new recipe, and pretty much every Monday I'll probably be cooking through that recipe. And then every Tuesday, generally every Tuesday, I'll probably be cooking some other recipe that I've released sometime in the past. Today, what we're doing is a little bit different. I did a poll over on YouTube, and I took a poll of all of the ingredients that are in my refrigerator and asked people what they want to see me put in a fried rice, and that's what we're cooking today. So if you're watching on YouTube, there is a screenshot of that poll. If you're watching on Reddit, it's right here. That's the poll. And there was a couple of things that were going on. I think the ones that most people voted for were the ramen, the pineapples, potato, bacon, and then one other thing that I can't remember. Oh yeah, various cheeses. I didn't even mention what kind of cheese. I just said various cheeses. So what we're doing today is a Korean dish that involves glazed potato and then a ramen kimchi fried rice with a cheese involved somehow. I don't know if it's going to work. We'll find out. But if you have any questions, feel free and drop your questions in the chat. Also, if you're looking for any of the recipes, both of the things that I'm cooking today are based off of various recipes that I have already released. So definitely, if you're interested in stuff like that, hop over to the YouTube channel and check out some of those recipes. Those come out every Friday, and we're working our way to 3,500 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, hop over, check it out. Please subscribe. Only if you're interested. Don't subscribe if you're not interested. I don't know why people subscribe when they're not interested. That's silly. Cool. So for my potatoes, I'm not actually going to use peanut oil today. I'm going to use vegetable oil. Intentionally using vegetable oil because I don't want my potatoes to taste like peanut. So this is actually not vegetable oil, but grapeseed oil. We're going to need quite a bit of it in order to get those potatoes to sear. So that was like maybe even a quarter cup of potato, or of maybe a quarter cup of oil, maybe even a little bit more. That might have been like closer to 5 tablespoons of oil. And then I'm adding my potatoes in. If you have been soaking your potatoes in water, be very, very careful at that point. You probably just noticed, but I did just burn my arm a little bit. That pretty much happens every time that I cook potatoes, though. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is my potatoes are chopped pretty large, so this is relatively easy. But what we want to do is get as much surface area of the potatoes in contact with the cast iron skillet, because everything that is touching the cast iron is going to sear. Everything that's not touching the cast iron is not going to sear properly. So we want our potatoes flat side down with the most possible surface area making contact with that cast iron skillet. And then just like anything else that we want to sear, we want to give it, I like to go for a full 2 minutes. And that's going to, you don't want to disturb it because that, we want to let that stay undisturbed for a full 2 minutes in order to get that nice crisp seared bottom. Divided Donut, did I watch Kenji Lopez all? Yes, I watch a lot of Kenji's channel. I've watched so much of Kenji's channel that I honestly have stopped watching Kenji's channel because I've watched every video. I've watched too much Kenji. But yeah, definitely like a lot of like the way that those recipe videos are oriented are based off of the style that Kenji has been doing. Which is basically, I was watching a lot of those videos at the start of quarantine. And then I was like, that sounds like a fun thing to do. So yeah, if you've ever watched any of the recipe videos and thought like, this feels a little bit like a Kenji Lopez video, that's generally what I'm going for. That's also why all the camera angles are pointed downward. That's why I like to use that kind of camera angles, because it kind of, what you're looking at is what I'm looking at. So hopefully the perspective that you're getting from the camera angle is generally, this is what it looks like when I'm moving around the kitchen. So. But yeah, Divided Donut, to answer your question, a bunch of the recipes that I'm referencing or like riffing off of today come from Serious Eats, which is the blog that Kenji Lopez writes for. Still writes for, maybe? I don't know if he still writes for it. He used to wrote a lot of stuff for it at one point. But yeah, if you're not familiar with Serious Eats, definitely check them out. They're the blog that like made popular a lot of the like fundamentals that Kenji Lopez has made popular. So like the double fry method, that came, lots of people associate that with Kenji Lopez, but I'm pretty sure it came out on the Serious Eats page. Yeah. Ooh, do I watch MasterChef? Yeah, I used to. I don't have cable anymore, so I don't get MasterChef anymore. I just have a Netflix account. Maybe it's on Netflix, but when I had cable, I used to watch MasterChef a lot. That and Iron Chef, which is kind of like when I started assembling the concept for this live stream, it reminded me a lot of Iron Chef. Cool. All right, so we're at 2.5 minutes. I'm gonna start checking my potatoes. Yeah, that's good. All right, we're gonna agitate these a little bit. And you'll notice that the side of the potato that was touching the bottom of the cast iron pan has got that really, really nice browning to it. So that's what we're looking for. We want that on all sides of our potatoes. So we're going to toss and do the same thing for the whole potato. If you're really diligent, you could get some tongs out and just flip them individually. I'm not going to do that because I don't think we need to be that careful. And I honestly have never really noticed a difference whether or not if I just toss the pan. Cool. The stream today is giving you cutthroat kitchen vibes. Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's pretty accurate, like Iron Chef, except I'm not competing with anyone. I mostly just like it because it's just like kind of challenging me to figure out what to do with 5 ingredients that don't belong together. Also, just like a cool way of trying to figure out new recipes. But cutthroat kitchen vibes, I'm definitely not a cutthroat kitchen chef. Oh yeah, he does still. Oh, cool. Divided. Oh yeah. Thanks for the information. Yeah. That's what I figured. So I figured that I'm pretty sure I've still seen like an occasional article come up from him, but not as often as I used to see him. Also, he's like way more famous than Serious Eats now, so it makes sense that he's not writing as often because he's got like 2 New York Times bestseller books and a viral YouTube channel, so it kind of makes sense. Oh, Iron Chef Japan for sure. Yeah, Iron Chef Japan for sure, but with the American dubs, or with the English dubs. Yeah, I just, the English dubs are really funny. Also, fun tip, but I love that the host of Iron Chef Japan is also the bad guy from the Jet Li movie Romeo Must Die. I love that that's the same guy. It cracks me up. Such a silly guy. Yan Can Cook, yes. Martin Yan. Yeah, if anyone is wondering. The namesake of this channel is called Wu Can Cook. It's a reference to a very, very popular PBS cooking show back in the 90s, run by a guy. His name is Martin Yan. And he had a show that was called Yan Can Cook. And that's the inspiration for the name of this channel. Yeah. Cool. What are we cooking? Yeah. Unwanator. It's a tough username. Today, what we're cooking right now, we're cooking a couple of things, but right now what I'm cooking is a Korean potato dish that if you've ever had Korean food, you probably associate it with a Korean side dish. So it's part of a series of side dishes that you'll often get with Korean barbecue. They call it banchan. And in those side dishes, that's usually where you'll get like things like kimchi, bean sprouts, usually a little bit of japchae. What else? Usually some kind of tofu. And one of those side dishes is a glazed potato. And it comes in like a very, very small dish. So usually like about that big. And you might get like 5 or 6 pieces of potato. And it's glazed in a sweet sauce. So that's what we're making right now. So we're going to sear these potatoes in a cast iron skillet till it's nice and brown all around. And then we're going to toss it in a gochujang glaze, which we're going to do in a wok. The reason that we're doing that is because I asked people to vote on some ingredients that happen to be in my refrigerator. And I'm throwing together a recipe based off of the things that you voted for, which is why we're making potatoes. Yeah. So, yeah. Or did. So I'm looking for a pretty deep browning on my potatoes here. We need these things to be pretty crispy, otherwise they're going to start falling apart in our glazed mess. So. Yeah. Ooh, taiyaki. Divided donut. Have I ever made taiyaki? It's on my to-do list. It also looks really, really hard. So, it's definitely on my to-do list of things I'd like to try. But also looks like one of the things that I would fuck up a lot, and then just eventually just get frustrated, and then eat broken taiyaki. Okay, that's looking pretty good. All right, so for our potatoes, you'll notice that I did not salt or season these in any fashion, which I love doing intentionally because I found that at the high temperatures that our skillet is at, super often the things that you season with, it's eventually just gonna burn. So I like to season it off heat. So this is just kosher salt that I'm adding right now. But super often, especially if I was eating this for breakfast, I might throw in some like garlic powder or onion powder, something like that. But those spices, they're also really, really delicate. So in the high heat of a cast iron skillet, like what we were just cooking in, they would probably just burn. So usually what I'll do is if I am going to season my potatoes, I'll take them off heat and then I'll season them in a bowl like this. So that's our potatoes. What we're gonna do now is head back to the stove, and I'm gonna get my wok heated up. So what we're gonna do at this point is gonna look pretty similar to like a General Tso's chicken or a honey sesame chicken or any of those like fried chicken nuggets, fried chicken glazed nuggets that come from like Panda Express Chinese food. What we're gonna do is we're gonna throw our aromatics in first. So we're gonna bloom out some aromatic elements. And then we're going to toss in our potatoes with our glaze, and that's just going to give us a nice wok-tossed glaze to these potatoes. So I have never done this before, but it makes sense to me in concept, so we'll see. Yeah. Ooh, egg with rice. What's my favorite food? Favorite food to cook? Probably my favorite things to cook, anything that happens in a wok. I've been really into like Thai noodles lately. But definitely, like, the things that I'm most comfortable with, definitely Chinese food, because those are all things that I like have been eating since I was a kid, so I already know how they're supposed to taste, and generally know how they're supposed to be cooked. The things that I've been really into cooking lately, a lot of Thai food, so I've been really into like perfecting a lot of Thai noodle dishes. So I've been doing a lot of chow fun based dishes, like pad Thai, pad see ew, pad kim ao, things like that, stuff that I've been messing around with a lot lately. Also very similar because it also is cooked in a wok. So conceptually kind of similar, but a little bit like more out of my comfort zone a little bit because it's working with rice noodles in the fashion that I generally don't work with. Other than that, though, probably another of my favorites is like most Italian pastas. I cook a lot of Italian pastas when I'm not cooking in woks. So I do a lot of like carbonaras, bolognese, stuff like that, lasagnas. Yeah. Cool. What are we cooking tonight? Oh yeah, Real Profits. How's it going? Yeah. What are we cooking tonight? So today we're doing a little. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I did a poll over on the YouTube channel a couple of days ago, and I had a list of everything that was in my refrigerator, and then I took the top 5 things that everyone voted for and assembled a recipe. So that's what we're cooking right now. are a combination of random ingredients that you guys picked, some of which make sense, a lot of which don't make sense. That's why we're making potatoes right now in a fried rice. It makes no sense. Why would you put potatoes in a fried rice? It's because you asked me to, so that's why we're doing it. So what we're cooking, specifically what we're cooking right now at this point, is a Korean side dish that comes from Korean barbecue, and it's a glazed potato dish. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember the Korean name of that glazed potato. But it comes from banchan, and essentially what we're going to do is we just made some home fries, which is... that camera's not on. We just made some home fries, and what we're going to do is we're going to toss these in our wok. So here's my home fries. And we're going to toss these in our wok just like you would do a fried chicken. And we're going to get this nice gochujang glazed fried chicken. So, if you're looking for it, pretty much everything that I'm cooking right now is riffing off of other recipes that I've already written. So the glaze for these potatoes, it comes from a gochujang glazed fried chicken that I did a couple of weeks ago. The fried rices are riffing off of a Hawaiian fried rice and a kimchi fried rice recipe that I released. That was, I think, like 5-6 months ago. Those recipes, they're always out on the YouTube channel every Friday, so if you're looking for that stuff, hop over to the YouTube and check some of that stuff out. New recipes, those are coming out every Friday, so last Friday we came out with a recipe for dandan mian, which is a Chinese pantry dish, pantry noodle dish. And then this Friday coming up is going to be bibimbap. We're doing a bibimbap, which is a Korean barbecue rice bowl. So lots of stuff like that coming out every Friday. This Friday is going to be Korean barbecue rice bowls. So if you're interested in stuff like that, hop over to the YouTube channel and check some of those recipes out. Those are out every Friday, so if you want to check those out, coming up this Friday, bibimbap. We're working our way to 3,500 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit that goal, hop over and check it out. Cool. You're here for the adventure. Let's roll with it. Yeah, me too. I'm here for this. All right, so if you're not sure if your wok is hot enough, what we're looking for is all of this smoke coming off of the wok. So if you don't see the smoke like this coming off, probably means that your wok is not hot enough. So you want to stop at that point and pull back and make sure that you're not overheating or underheating your wok, or throwing things into your wok before it's ready to go. Another super important part about wok cook or glazing in a wok is that we want to go easy on the oil here, because if you add too much oil, it's going to separate from the glaze, and then you're going to have an oil, like a layer of oil atop of the glaze, which is not what we're after. So there's also a minimum amount of oil that you need in order to get the aromatics to bloom properly. So what I'm going to do is, this comes from a lot of Chinese wok cooking. As I added, that was about 4 tablespoons of peanut oil, and then I'm actually going to remove about 2 of those 4 tablespoons. And then now that we have less oil, I'm going to add my aromatics first. So this is my garlic and ginger. And then I'm going to let that go just long enough until it's fragrant. That usually takes about 10 seconds for me. But use your nose at this point and give it a smell. When you start smelling ginger and garlic, that's when you're ready to move on. Yeah. So next up, I'm adding my potatoes to my wok, followed by my glaze. Here it is. This one? No. This one. Probably should have labeled these. Yeah, it's this one. That would have been bad. All right, that's my glaze going in. And then I'm just going to cook a little bit of this moisture off, and that should be it for our potatoes. mix it. And I think this worked. These look pretty good. So super important, especially when you're working with glazes, you want to rinse that out immediately. Otherwise it's going to start crystallizing and then you're going to have a burnt glaze on your wok, which is not good. Let's give these a taste. Oh yeah, that fucking works. I'm so stoked for that. Honestly, a little bit surprised that it worked, but it was really good. I can't believe that worked. I'm a little surprised that that worked. Yeah, that's good. Whew. Damn. All right, meanwhile, while that is heating up, I have a pot going. This is just some boiling water, and we're going to get our ramen going. All right, so this is definitely one of the ingredients that you guys voted for and asked me to put in a fried rice. I'm going to see how it goes. I've never done this before, but I have, as far as I can tell, this also makes sense to me, is adding ramen to a fried rice. So hopefully this works. Yes. So this is just a single brick of ramen. We're also going to be combining this with some rice, so we don't want to use too much ramen here. And then while that's going, actually we can get our bacon moving. Alright, so while that's moving, I'm going to add my bacon to our cast iron and start rendering out some bacon fat. Yeah. Very starch heavy tonight, yeah. I'm okay with that though. Ooh, song name, yeah. I don't know which one is playing. Actually, yeah, I don't know which one is playing, but all of the songs, if you're looking for all of the songs, they're always published under my music channel, which is called Woo Cooks Beats. So, link that. And that's all on Spotify and YouTube. I'm not sure which one is playing though right now because I can't hear it. Also, I'm pretty sure that the stream is like a minute and a half behind the chat. Alright, so I'm doing a couple things right now. I just finished over on the cutting board, boiling some ramen. There's nothing special about what I just did with this ramen. This is literally just some freeze-dried ramen. And that is our ramen. What we're going to do though is we're going to incorporate that with our rice. So we're going to cut that in with our rice in our wok fry. And then just approach it exactly like you would approach a fried rice from there. So we're going to toss the two together. And hopefully, I think what's going to happen is we're going to end up with a cheesy fried rice, which should be somewhere in the ballpark of like basically what a mac and cheese is, I think. Yeah, oh yeah, the feel is still, yeah, lots of people have been looking for that one. Yeah, almost all of them are remixes, for sure. Cool. This is one on camera. So back over on the stove, what we're going to do is something that comes out of another recipe that I have done, or a couple of recipes that I've done. Oops. But essentially what I'm going to do is we're going to render that bacon fat, and then we're going to remove the solids so that all is left are the fats, so the liquidy fat elements. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wok fry our fried rice like you normally would, and then add it back to the skillet with that bacon fat so we can get a nice crispy sear. So what we're really after, so the bacon bits are going to be really tasty because obviously it's bacon. But what we're really after is that liquid element of our bacon fat. That's how we're going to get our sear. Without that liquid bacon fat, we're not going to be able to sear it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to render that fat, and then we're going to add half of our fried rice, and then a layer of cheese, and then add the second half of our fried rice, the second layer of cheese, and then what we're going to do is throw it under the broiler after that and get a nice crispy cheese element, I think. I will reiterate again, none of these are recipes that I've done, but I'll give it a shot. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. How often do I go to the grocery store? That's a good question. I go to the main grocery store. So here, the one that I go to it's called Sprouts. I guess like the equivalent in other places would be like a Safeway or a Smart & Final, Vons, Raleigh's. There's different names for main groceries, big box grocery stores everywhere. But I go to the big box grocery store like twice a week, or once every 2 weeks, and that's where I usually get like the really essentials, so like eggs and milk, cream, tofu, stuff like that. But I also live in Chinatown, so usually what I'll do for like a lot of the ingredients that I use that are like Asian or Asian in the vein of Asian things is I'll pick them up in Chinatown. And it so happens that I live within like a 2-block radius of like 5-6 different Chinese grocery stores, which is really useful. So a lot of the things that I cook are coming from one of the Chinese grocers. All right, so that's our bacon. What I'm going to do now is I'm removing just the solids here. And then I'm going to hold on to these solids, these bacon bits, I guess. And then we're going to save our bacon fat. Oh yeah, Real Profits, good question. How do I like my bacon? So almost always, if you see me cooking with bacon, I'm probably cooking with thick cut bacon. And that's for a couple of reasons, but the main reason is that because thick cut bacon has more fat to it. So it's not more like, so the thin cut bacon, that's probably what you would eat for like breakfast with your hash browns and stuff. Thick cut bacon has a lot more fat to it. Which is a lot more useful in this context where we're looking for that liquid fat element. Where I've done the same thing with thin cut bacon, I've had to use like twice as much bacon because it's generally a little bit leaner. So I love using thick cut bacon for the purposes like this. I have definitely done it with thin cut bacon, and it just like completely backfired because there wasn't enough fat to the bacon. But oh yeah, how do I like it cooked? I love it crispy. I love like really, really crispy bacon. Especially in a context like this. Cool. All right, hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. I'm going to introduce myself one more time. Today we're doing something a little bit different from what we would normally be doing. I took a poll over on the YouTube channel of everything that was in my refrigerator and asked you guys what you wanted me to put in a fried rice. So if you're watching over on YouTube, that's the screenshot that's scrolling through the screen. If you're watching on Reddit, it would be this. I took a poll and I asked people what they wanted me to put in a fried rice, and this is what we're making today. So today we're going to be involving a couple of different things, but the main things that people had asked for is ramen, pineapple, and various kinds of cheeses, which is a big challenge because I've never put pineapple or I've never put cheese in a fried rice. Definitely never put ramen in a fried rice, so I'm going to check out and see what happens. So if you're looking for the recipes, they're all live over on my YouTube channel. Those are out every Friday. There is no recipe for what I'm cooking right now because I just threw it together a couple minutes before I started the stream. So, but everything that I'm doing right now is based off of other recipes that I have written. Those are out every Friday. So last Friday we did a dan dan mian, it's from Chinese like pantry noodles. And this Friday coming up is going to be Korean barbecue bibimbap, which is like a barbecue rice bowl. Coming this Friday. Oh, you watched for the song you were after? Yeah, cool. Cool. So, if you're looking for those recipes that are out every Friday, we're working our way to 3,500 subs by the end of the month. So, if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, hop over and give it a subscribe. All right, let's make some fried rice. Right, so I'm adding that with some peanut oil to start. And next is our lapchang, or sausage. And lapchang, just like any other sausage, has a lot of fat to it. So we're going to give it some time to render out some of that fat. This is also one of the first and only times you will see me putting something in before adding the garlic and ginger. And that's because I really want to give a lot of time to this lapchang to really get crisped up. So what I like to do is add it before everything else, and then add our garlic and ginger, and then bloom out that garlic and ginger in the fat of the sausage. So that's really useful. Whereas if we had added the garlic and ginger first, I probably would have ended up with a little bit burnt garlic and ginger. All right, next up are our aromatics, so garlic and ginger, and the whites of my green onions going in. And you'll notice that I specifically pushed half of my ingredients to one side, and that's to make sure that my aromatics get nice solid contact with the bottom of the wok, because that's what we'll need in order for them to bloom out their aromatic qualities. Otherwise, you won't really get much out of them. And again, once that's nice and fragrant, we can add our starches, so our rice and our ramen. So I'm breaking up the ramen the same way that I would break up this rice. We don't want large strings of ramen in the same way that you're looking for when you eat like soup, ramen soup. I really want to break those up a little bit because otherwise we're going to have weird bites going on. So I am intentionally breaking those noodles apart. Next up is my frozen pineapple going back in. And followed by my sauce. So you will notice that once all of those things are in the wok, you can listen actually. There's not a lot of sizzling going on in my wok anymore. You listen close. There's a little bit. But once everything is in the wok, you're going to have a lot of trouble retaining heat anymore. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of trouble retaining that heat because there's too many things in the wok. At our point right now, that's totally fine because there's not a lot left to cook anymore. But if at any point you're still cooking and you notice that happen, you're in big trouble and you're on your way to a super, super soggy fried rice. Pineapple fried, yeah, something wild. Yeah, so actually, that I was secretly hoping that people would pick the pineapple because it's actually an ingredient that I throw in fried rice all the time. What's super, super strange though, that definitely doesn't belong. The first thing that we did was some russet potatoes. So these are some Korean gochujang glazed potatoes, which come, actually this is a real dish. This is a banchan dish that comes from actual Korean barbecue. I did not make this up, this is a real thing. And this is glazed in gochujang and a little bit of honey. And then the last thing that was a little bit odd is the inclusion of ramen, which doesn't make any sense at all. So here's where I'm not sure if this is going to work, but here goes nothing. So I'm adding all of this to my skillet, and the last thing that we're going to do is throw this under the broiler for about 2 minutes. Let's take this off. So if you're not familiar with using your broiler, what essentially the broiler is it's just turning on the top heat elements of your oven. If you have a gas range, it's super useful because essentially what you're doing is just burning from the top down. So it's just the top burners going down on full blast. So if you put your oven rack at the very, very top, really, really close to those heat elements, you can do things like sear the top of things really, really hard, really, really quickly. So today we're going to leave that in and sear for no more than like 2 minutes. And that's going to give us a nice crispy top. So the reason that I'm doing that today is because we're including cheese in our wok fry, which is going to be really useful if we burn it on top, because we'll have a nice crispy cheese. Yeah. Cool. All right, meanwhile, let's clean up our wok one last time. Very important, always make sure to clean your wok while it's hot. If you let your wok cool down and then try and clean it, you're going to have a lot more trouble cleaning it. So usually what I like doing is just giving the whole thing a rinse while it's hot, and most things will probably rinse right off. You'll notice that I just rinsed it twice and pretty much everything just came right off. Yeah. Oh, Daniel Lee, what are we making today? Yeah, so what we're making right now is a fried rice that is including ramen, pineapple, and cheese. So today we're using a version of shredded cheese that I have never actually intended to use in anything other than like random grilled cheeses that I make on the off occasion. I actually think that it's going to work because I think what it's going to do is work in the realm of like mac and cheese a little bit and get some like nice cheese stretch. I didn't use too much of it because I was a little bit tentative about it. But essentially what we did was a pineapple fried rice with the inclusion of a little bit of bacon and a little bit of ramen. And I think that's going to work. Who knows? Maybe. All right. Cool. Set it back over here. There we go. Yeah, so for folks who are wondering, there are a number of things that you guys picked, but the top five things were potatoes, which is what this is. These are our gochujang glazed potatoes. We also used some cheese, pineapple, ramen, and some bacon was the last one. So and that is how we ended up with what we're cooking today. Did I completely make this up as I cooked? No, so I planned it. I took this poll. The poll was up on the YouTube channel back on, I think, Monday or Tuesday earlier this week. While it was running, I was just generally gathering ideas. So by like this time yesterday, I had a pretty good idea of what I was going to cook. I had already figured out when I saw that it was very likely that I was going to be using potatoes. I already had a pretty good idea that I was going to be doing this dish, which is this is a real thing. This comes from Korean cuisine. And then when I saw the ramen, I think when I added ramen to the list, I was like kind of in the idea of like, I guess I could probably use that to make some kind of fried rice. And it looks like, yeah, I think that worked. I think that totally worked. Ooh, dude, that looks super good. Yeah, that totally worked. I'm a little surprised that this worked. All right. So I'm topping this with a couple of things. First off is our bacon bits. And finally, our green onions. And then over on the side, it's going to be our potatoes. So, oh, it's on the wrong camera. I guess I should go back to the stove though. Just like our wok though, we also want to make sure that we don't leave things in the wok, so I'm removing, in the cast iron. So I'm removing this all out of my cast iron. You also notice, you can see this now, at the bottom of our cast iron, everything that was touching the cast iron has this nice crispy bottom to it. That is also going to be in our finishing bowl too. That's really what we're after here. And then just like with our wok, I'm giving everything a rinse down. And since it's still hot, pretty much everything just comes right off while it's non-stick. And that's essentially all you have to do to clean a cast iron skillet. Someone asked this earlier too, how do you clean the cast iron? Usually what we'll do, as long as you have treated your cast iron properly, if you haven't treated your cast iron properly, this might not work for you, but if you have taken care of your cast iron, when you rinse it while it's still hot, almost everything came off. So there's a little bit of residue that's still stuck behind, which I'm just going to wipe off with a paper towel. And that's it. We don't need to scrub, no soap, nothing like that. And then last thing that we want to do is add a little bit of oil. Give it a wipe down. And then I'm going to do Exact same thing for my wok here too. A little bit of oil on the heat, and then just give it a nice coating. And that's going to make sure that nothing rusts. For dishes that stick more on the wok, do you just keep on cooking through it as it sticks, or do you try and clean it first? It depends how badly it has stuck. Hopefully, so hypothetically, if you have done everything correctly, nothing should stick to the wok. Everything should have come off. I will honestly say that's almost never the case. Oftentimes things will stick, but it's generally while in the process of tossing, things will come off. And that's usually okay because the things that are stuck are probably going to get nice and crispy, so you'll have a nice crispy piece of like sometimes pork, or sometimes there'll be an egg that sticks. That's generally okay. If it really sticks and it's not coming off, then you probably have done something wrong. It might actually mean that the wok is not seasoned properly. So if you notice things sticking to your wok a lot, especially if it's made out of carbon steel, it could very well be that it just hasn't been seasoned properly, and you just keep cooking on it, and just generally over the course of time, as you use it, it will stop sticking. So when I first bought this wok, nothing sticks to this wok anymore. Like I just used a whole bunch of stuff that absolutely should have stuck to the wok. If you use honey in a wok, all of that stuff is gonna stick like immediately because it has sugar, so honey is sticky. It's probably, if you let it sit for too long, it will absolutely start crystallizing, and then you're gonna have honey stuck to the wok. But you'll notice nothing actually stuck to it because I've been cooking on this wok for like a year and a half. Basically like every day for a year and a half, so it has this really, really nice non-stick surface. But when I first bought it, so when I first got this wok, everything stuck to it. Like literally everything that I cooked into it would stick. Like freaking like garlic would stick to the wok, which is crazy because how does garlic stick to anything? But just over the course of time, I'd say like it took like 5 or 6 cooks. But after like the 5th or 6th cook, things just generally stopped sticking. And that's just from use. Yeah, let's try it. Ooh, yeah, that's really good. Ooh, yeah, that's really good. I honestly a little bit surprised that worked, but super, super tasty. Lots of like nice like spiciness and heat that comes from that gochujang. I think if we did actually use gochujang in this, it probably would have been a little bit better because we would have had a thicker glaze. What we ended up using was doubanjiang because I ran out of gochujang, which makes it like it doesn't cut quite as much. I wish we had gochujang. I wish I used a little bit more gochujang actually. But then like all of the other elements like that, the vinegars that we incorporated like cut through a lot of the sweetness that we're using. And I actually think it's going to pair really, really nicely with these potatoes because these are really, really like bright, kind of just like flavor in your face, and this is a little bit more subtle. So, and I totally did not believe that this would work, but it totally works. The ramen plus rice, it totally plays. It's going to work. I kind of love that fact that worked. Oh, Daniel, good question. How do I manage the smoke that comes from the wok indoors? It's super tricky, but there's a couple of things that I always make sure that I do. It really helps to have an overhead. If you're trying to wok cook and you don't have an overhead, you're gonna have a lot more trouble. The other thing that I always make sure is that all of your windows are open. Obviously, make sure that everything is. Forgot to finish this. Yeah, obviously make sure that all of your windows are open, but like I think the most important thing to remember to do is make sure that you unplug all of your smoke detectors. So before I cook, I always unplug my smoke detectors, and that just like makes sure that nothing goes off while I'm cooking, which is like bound to happen if you're cooking in a wok at some point. So cool. Yeah. Came out nicely. Yeah, thanks, Shamina. I'm glad that this worked. I was not confident that it would work, but yeah. Cool. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, it probably looks a little bit different from every other stream that we've done. Mostly because usually when I'm live streaming, I'll probably be cooking through a recipe that I've done. Usually on Mondays, I'll be cooking through a recipe that came out on the channel on Friday. So every Friday over on YouTube, there's a new recipe video that comes out. Last Friday, we did a dandan mian, which is a Chinese sesame paste noodle dish. And on last Monday, we cooked through it live, which is super fun. All of those recipes, they live over on my YouTube channel, so if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, that's a fun place to check out some new things to cook. There's a couple of series that are in progress. The one that people have been watching a lot of lately is the Chinese American food hack series, where I've been deconstructing a lot of things that come from Panda Express, PF Chang's, things like that. Actually, a lot of the things that I was drawing influence for these potatoes came from those recipes. And essentially what I like doing is deconstructing those recipes and then removing the American qualities and replacing them with a traditional approach to wok frying. And seeing what that actually looks like. So that's super interesting, especially with this particular potato dish, because this is actually an authentic thing that comes from Korean food. And what we did was borrowed a whole bunch of things that come from American Chinese food. Things like honey, and what else did we use? Definitely the honey. I forget what else we put in here, but definitely the honey. And essentially just glazed it in a honey glaze. And that's super interesting. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel and check that stuff out. Those recipes are out every Friday. We also live stream concurrently over there. So if you've been following this stream the entire time, essentially what we did today was I took a poll over on the YouTube channel of all of the things that were in my refrigerator and asked you guys what you wanted me to put, what you wanted to see me put in a fried rice. And then assembled the things based on that. So today what we ended up using was some potatoes, ramen, pineapple, bacon, and something else. Oh, cheese. Cheese is the big one. Cheese is the weirdest one. And we assembled a dish that was using those 5 ingredients. And it came out really interesting. So if you want to, I'll probably be doing this next Thursday too. So if you want to hop over to the YouTube channel and look out for those polls, they're all going to live over on the community tab of the channel. So if you want to be a part of how we're going to assemble next Thursday's stream, hop over and check it out. Cool. Cool. I think that's it, everyone. Let me know if you have any more questions. I think I probably missed something because I wasn't looking the entire time. But I'll be here doing dishes, so if you have any more questions, pop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer everyone. Let's see, last thing. Lots of people ask about the music, but if you're looking for the music, that's all published under my music channel, which is called Wu Cooks Beats. There's the music channel. And then we're working our way to 3,500 subs by the end of the month over on the food channel, which is called Wu Can Cook. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, hop over and check that out. Please subscribe. Cool. All right, thanks everyone. I'll see you. We'll be, oh yeah, what's coming out tomorrow? Bibimbap coming out tomorrow, which is a Korean barbecue rice bowl. And then we'll be back on Monday doing, we'll be cooking bibimbap on Monday. So, cool. All right, I'll see you all soon.
time. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're bad. Glass of brandy, darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.
Slow. If you come over and start up a conversation with just me, then trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop, put Ben the Man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me, said boy. Let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although
although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room. And now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. One weekend we let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so go all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up a plate. We talk for hours and hours about the sweet and the sour and how your family is doing okay. We'll even get in a taxi. We'll kiss in the backseat. Tell the driver make the radio play. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. You said, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room. And now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. Come on, be my baby, come on. 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 Come on, be my baby, come on.